Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I worry that all of you must be tired of listening to more and more politics now, because all of yesterday, that is Sunday, was full of politics. But what's happened this Sunday, yesterday as I record this, was a very important political event. And that once the initial flush of the results is over, then you start doing stock taking and figuring out what implications does it have on politics going ahead. Is it a big moment? Yes, it's a big moment. How big it is, how much does it matter, and what possibilities does it open up? So some of that we'll talk about today very briefly. This is a brief, short and crisp, hopefully, episode of Cut the Clutter. And second, I know the most cluttered thing in everybody's minds right now is vaccinations. And this has got particularly complicated now after the interview that Adar Poonawalla, the boss of Serum Institute of India, the world's largest vaccine manufacturer, has given to the Times in London. And actually it also surprised a lot of people in India that he was in London. He has gone to London with his family, or to be with his family. And that is where he gave this interview. Now that led to much confusion and questioning, controversy, lots of anger. So in the process now, Government of India has come out and issued a clarification. He's come out and issued a clarification. So I will talk about what that means and where does India stand vis-a-vis vaccination. So two things we'll talk about, each one very briefly, I promise you. So first is politics. Now West Bengal is done and dusted. So don't worry, I'm not boring you with what happened at Nandigram or what's happening in the state. What implications can it have for national politics? Now, the one extreme view is, oh, now Mamata Banerjee emerges as the front runner to lead the opposition against Narendra Modi, with 3 years still left for next general elections. And she, if anything, is young by Indian standards by the standards of Indian politics. She is younger than Narendra Modi. So anybody who's younger by a few years to Narendra Modi is seen to be in the reckoning. But what is the way ahead if that has to happen? So this might look like a delicious prospect, but it's not a done deal yet. We also wrote a 50-word edit on this. Please see that, because every time something like this happens, if Nitish Kumar wins, say as he did in 2015 in Bihar, people say these things. So don't jump to these things. To become a challenger all over India, you need to build an umbrella coalition with a critical mass of forces, each with a vote bank. No umbrella coalition can work without the Congress. That's a coalition against the BJP. When these were coalitions against the Congress, they needed BJP either to be in the coalition, as it became with NDA later, or to support the coalition from outside, as was, say, the case with the VP Singh government, short-lived VP Singh government. So one of these two core parties, if one is ruling India, the other has to be the core of the coalition against it. Now, is the Congress party then willing to cede leadership to somebody else, be it Sharad Pawar, be it Mamata Banerjee? So the next question comes in, who will now be the UPA chairperson? Will the Congress again want that position? So all these things are now open and these are up in the air. Now, as we look at the situation, Congress party is crucial because it still has about 20% of the vote, which sticks with it. That's more than the vote share any other opposition party has. In fact, that's more than the vote share of any two opposition parties have today, or maybe even more than two. Now, what does Congress party do with that vote? That vote doesn't count for very much by itself, because that vote is scattered all over the country. BJP's vote is concentrated in the Hindi heartland, two western states, that is Maharashtra and Gujarat, and also then to some extent now in West Bengal. West Bengal BJP is a very powerful party, 37-38% vote even in this election, about 40% in parliament election. Congress and the left are out of West Bengal. And again in the northeast, say in Assam and some places, mostly in Assam, the BJP has a substantial amount of vote. Now, if you look at the Congress, wherever the Congress comes up against the BJP, Congress gets wiped out. We keep telling you that in the last two elections, its record is about the same. Wherever Congress is the second party, Congress is the challenger to the BJP, BJP's success rate is 92%, which means Congress's success rate, the odds that a Congress candidate will defeat the defeat a BJP candidate nationally is only 8%. 8% is almost 1 in 12 and a half, 1 in 13. You want to be kind, you can say 1 in 12. So that is quite poor. At the same time, Congress party has this 20% vote. So this 20% vote does not get you a lot of seats, but this 20% vote adds a lot to an anti-Modi opposition coalition's kitty. So once again, picture this, that a coalition against Narendra Modi, a new UPA led by ABC, XYZ, of which Congress is a part, and Congress brings in this committed 20% vote which stays with the Congress party even in 2014 and 2019 Modi sweeps. Then it becomes a formidable combination. So the calculation Congress has to make is, and I bet it keeps making it all the time, and occasionally it gets it right, but usually it's been getting it wrong. So the calculation it has to make is, we cannot win many elections on our own. Definitely we have no chance of winning a national election on our own, at least in the foreseeable future. But we have this vote because we cannot defeat the BJP in most places. We have very little power in national politics. That is one thing. But look at the other side of the glass, which is half full, that unless we transfer this 20% vote to an anti-Modi coalition, nobody can defeat the BJP. So we have this vote, and this vote gives us leverage. So Congress then has to make a calculation in terms of how to use that leverage. And there the call Congress has to make is, what is more important for them now? Is it more important to come into power, to use the leverage of this 20% to say, look, without this 20%, you guys can't defeat Modi. So because of this, give me the UPA chairpersonship. Give us also the prime ministerial candidate in the next election 3 years from now. That is one thing. That is the maximalist position. But the minimalist position would be that I will not go into any coalition. I'll be by myself. If not next election, then next, then next, then next. So 2 elections have gone past like that. If Congress has only gone from 42 or 44 to 52 or like that. So that is the minimalist position. But there is a middle position. And the middle position is to say, look, maybe while I do want to come to power, everybody wants to come to power, but right now, for us to harbor any such notions of ever coming to power, and at least for the foreseeable future, we first have to find a way of defeating Narendra Modi. So who are the people who've defeated Narendra Modi? Latest now is Mamata Banerjee. There are not many people. Arvind Kejriwal has defeated him twice. Mamata Banerjee now has done so also. So Mamata Banerjee, she also comes from a much bigger state, 42 seats in national parliament. So she is a prospect. Now this khichatani, this tug of war, this stuff will go on behind the scenes now. So watch this space going ahead. Although let me tell you, Mamata Banerjee's time in a fresh term is not going to be easy, because the situation between her and the central government is quite taut and quite tense. You also have violence on the streets or parts of West Bengal, because West Bengal has a culture of political violence. So you will find that unless things calm down between her and the BJP, things will not calm down between her state government and the central government. So she is going to be quite busy where she is. But at the same time, national politics has opened up now. As the Congress makes this calculation, I have to, because we are wargaming, I have to tell you some facts. Fact is, if you look at the political map of India, you see some states where the Congress is in power. Obviously, Rajasthan, Congress is in power. Chhattisgarh, Punjab, and a few states here and there, Congress is in power, or Congress is in power in partnership. As say in Jharkhand, and Maharashtra. But if you see the other non-BJP forces or even BJP forces across the country, how many of these are people who are recent departures from the Congress party? When I say recent, I mean last 10-15 years. So once again, look at the political map of India. So if you start, say, in the east, in Assam, Himanta Biswa Sarma, he's the one who matters for the BJP, not just in Assam, but all of the northeast. He left the Congress party very recently. If you look at the southeastern coast, Andhra Pradesh, what used to be Andhra Pradesh, the leadership there is former Congress party. YSR was a member of Congress party, left because he felt either suffocated or he felt his ambitions not being accepted by the party. See the northeast, Tripura, Pradyot Dev Burman, ex-Congress party. So he also got disenchanted, left the Congress party, did not join the BJP. Then you go to other parts of the country, major states. Who's Mamata Banerjee? Ex-Congress. In fact, after she left Congress and she was asked why she not going back, she made that famous statement कि जब इंदिरा जी नहीं रही, राजीव जी नहीं रहे, तो कांग्रेस पार्टी कहाँ रही? At the same time, she still went back and joined the Congress party in UPA, but not now. Sharad Pawar, the leader who really commands power in the big state of Maharashtra. Maharashtra is the second biggest state in the country, and West Bengal is the third biggest state in the country in terms of the number of MPs sent to parliament. And that big ones are also Telangana, Andhra Pradesh. All these are sort of, I won't say littered with, all these are states which today are under the sway of former Congress elements. So Congress party has had a vote and had a support base, but that has got frittered away, that has fractionated simply because it's not been able to keep its talent together. So it has now some choices, particularly after this West Bengal election result. That election result has underlined for Congress party its stark choices. One is to take that minimalist view, which is serendipitously I'll carry on and one day power will come to me. Then you can go into gradual and then increasingly rapid decline. The other is to take a big punt and say the first thing we need is to defeat Narendra Modi. So anybody who will defeat Narendra Modi, we'll get them together and we will provide them the core while leaving our own ambitions aside for the time being. And the third thing is, which is the idealistic position from the Congress's point of view, if somebody in the Congress wants to take that position, is to reach out to all these people, all the Ruta Huas who've left the Congress party and say, please come back, we are sorry for whatever might have happened. If they do that, then again Congress becomes a power, but chances are that is the least likely to happen because all these people who left the Congress only left it because of the high command culture and because of the ruling family of the party, and each one wanted then to build their own dynasty, and they've all built their own dynasties. Even Mamata Banerjee has a nephew, or Bhaipo as he is called, in West Bengal. So this is the state of national politics. It may look very cluttered from a distance, but it is not once you put it in these analytical matrices, which is what I have tried to do. Obviously, at this point, we are only focusing on the opposition politics or opposition balance of power. Now we come to the issue over Adar Poonawalla and Serum Institute. Adar Poonawalla, we know, is a flamboyant businessman. He's also young, he likes to talk, he dresses well, he lives well. He's not defensive about any of that. So once you accept that, then you know that in a country like ours, with a big socialist overhang, and I would say with the overhang of humongous socialist hypocrisy, where to be rich is to be bad. And if you are rich and you talk about it, that means you have bad manners. And if you are rich and successful and you flaunt it, then for heaven's sake, you have to be a bad guy. Doesn't matter that if you are making 90% of the vaccines India needs right now to fight the coronavirus pandemic. So he gave an interview to London Times. He went to London. So first of all, everybody discovered a surprise that he flew in a private plane and went to London to be with his family. He has bought a sizable property in Britain as well. Anyway, so he gives an interview to London Times where he says a bunch of things. And one of the things he says is there's a lot of pressure on me to give these vaccines. And he's obviously hinting that now that the central government has created competition in a market which has shortages. So for the vaccines, Government of India has created a terrible complication, which is there is multiple pricing. Central government gets vaccines at a price of $150, that is $2. State governments will get at a price that Serum Institute and the other company Bharat Biotech will fix, and then state governments can further negotiate with them, which means state governments, its field has now been left open for Government of India to say that half the production I will take at this price, the other half can be auctioned, all of you make your bids, and this commodity is in short supply. When that commodity is in short supply, no state has money, no state has the power to print money. So every state now thinks, how can I negotiate better? What is my leverage? So obviously Maharashtra government's leverage would be, you are located in my state. Similarly, Telangana's leverage on Bharat Biotech will be, you are located in my state. And there will be similar things happening. So this means a lot of pressure. This means for 30 odd chief ministers now to be negotiating with Serum Institute and Bharat Biotech, or put it the other way around, for Adar Poonawalla and Dr. Krishna Ella to be negotiating with 30 odd chief ministers of India. Besides that, there are orders from the private sector. Now, all I'm trying to do is, I'm not taking an editorial or judgmental view on the policy that we do on the print.in, also in our 50-word edits, also in our opinion articles, also in mine. What I'm telling you is how this pie is cut. So once again, government has issued a clarification, Serum Institute, Adar Poonawalla has issued a clarification. You will see both of those on my screen. So what has happened so far? India has so far administered 16 crore vaccines. 16 crore. It does not mean that 16 crore people have got it. So if you count unique people who've got it, that is 13 crore people. So 13 crore have got it. What it means is that 3 crore have got both their shots. So 13 crore unique, that means people who have some coverage are 13 crore, 16 crore vaccines. Government of India has ordered a bunch of vaccines. Government of India now, Serum has also disclosed, and Government of India also has ordered 26 crore vaccines with Serum Institute of India and 5 crore vaccines with Bharat Biotech. This is approximately up to July. Now remember, government had said early on that their target is to vaccinate 30 crore Indians above the age of 45 by the end of July. Now if 30 crore Indians have to be vaccinated, Government of India needs 60 crore doses because it's a 2-dose vaccine. So when they get these 30 crores, these 30 crores will go into the arms of these people, and then obviously more orders will be placed. So Government of India, central government has now said that they are going to buy 60 crore vaccines in the course of time, of which about 31 crores have been ordered already, of which now Serum tells us that they have supplied 15 crores already to Government of India. We know that 16 crore have already been injected. So you can make a presumption that Bharat Biotech has supplied about a crore and a half. They have a small capacity yet, just about 40 lakhs per month. So they are scaling up their capacity as a Serum Institute. They are scaling up their capacity. Of the rest, on 28th of April, government paid an advance to Serum Institute of 1,732 crores and 50 lakh rupees for the supply of another 11 crore vaccines. That makes it 26 crores. And as it makes 11 crores to give it to the government, central government, it will also produce another 11 crores which it can sell to the states and the private sector. So now you have a better idea of the numbers. But remember, one vaccine dose does not mean one person vaccinated. 2 vaccine doses mean one person vaccinated. And you will see a similar proportionate set of numbers from Bharat Biotech also, just that at this point Bharat Biotech's production capacity is very, very limited. So that is the situation right now. What India needs is a lot of vaccines to bend this curve. India needs to vaccinate at a pace much faster than it is now. India has pushed in 16 crore vaccines in more than 100 days. For a population our size, that's too little. Don't say that we are doing faster than America or faster than UK. Those populations are a fraction of our population. So India at this point needs a lot more vaccines in the next month and a half, 2 months. And that is what Adar Poonawalla meant when he said that for the next 3 months, India is going to face a severe shortage of vaccines. So that is the situation, and that's the reason Dr. Fauci also told the Indian Express last week that government of India now should go around the world and buy up any supplies of any vaccines that is available. So we see that last Saturday, that is May Day, the first lot of Sputnik vaccine from Russia landed, 150,000 doses. It's still going through its clearance processes, because whatever happens in Bharat Sarkar, no matter how many fast track clearances you get, somebody has to put those rubber stamps on some documents in triplicate. So that is going on, and you can presume now that more and more of this will come. This will most certainly only go in the private sector, because it will cost more, maybe about $10 equivalent. So remember, the Sputnik vaccine, the Russian vaccine, is also an adenovirus 2-dose vaccine, not very different from the AstraZeneca, Oxford University, Serum Institute vaccine or Covishield. The only small difference is that Covishield uses the same adenovirus as a Trojan horse for both the shots. The Russian vaccine uses different adenoviruses for the 2 shots, just in case our body develops any immunity against the first adenovirus. So you've had now this trickle of vaccines coming in, besides what is already guaranteed by way of Indian production. Indian production can't be scaled up so quickly, because you have to either set up an entirely new vaccine production line, which takes a long time, or transfer an existing line to this vaccines production, which means that all your commitments of other vaccines to buyers around the world will suffer. So it's a complicated thing, and I think we'll have to watch this space very, very carefully.